Blade Runner 1982. Opening our list is the absolute king of the genre, the film that gave cyberpunk its visual code, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. In 1982, the world saw a Los Angeles of the future, choked by smog, drenched in perpetual rain, and illuminated by the aggressive neon of giant billboards. The story centers on Rick Deckard, a Blade Runner whose job it is to hunt replicants, bioengineered creatures created for slave labor in the colonies, but determined to assert their right to life. The horror here is existential and melancholic. It's not just the physical prowess of the replicants that is terrifying, but also the very idea that an artificially created creature could possess a deeper soul and will to live than a human. The interrogation scene with the Voight-Kampff test is a psychological thriller par excellence, where one false breath or pupil dilation separates life from firing. Ridley Scott created an atmosphere of total loneliness in an overcrowded city, where the Tyrell Corporation plays God, creating life only to limit it to a 4-year lifespan. Blade Runner is a philosophical meditation packaged in a film noir guise. Roy Batty's final monologue in the rain has become legendary because at that moment, the viewer realizes the monster here is not an android, but a system that has deprived him of his right to memory and a future. The film's visual style, combining high-tech and devastation, became a benchmark for the entire genre for decades to come. This film explores how, in a world where everything can be bought and reproduced, true humanity becomes the most scarce commodity. Blade Runner 2049, 2017. Second place goes to Denis Villeneuve's triumphant return to the world of replicants. Blade Runner 2049 is a rare case where a sequel not only maintains its high standards, but also expands the original's mythology, transforming it into a next-generation visual masterpiece. Officer K, himself a new generation replicant, follows orders to destroy older models until he stumbles upon a secret that could destroy the already fragile order of the world, the possibility of natural reproduction among artificial beings. The horror here lies in the scale of devastation and digital loneliness. Villeneuve shows us a world that has become even colder and more alienated, vast orange deserts where Las Vegas once stood, the gray walls of orphanage factories, and Joy's holographic lover, who is nothing more than a set of algorithms created for consumer convenience. It's terrifying to realize that even love in this future is a subscription product. Kay searches for his identity in a world where he is merely a tool, and his journey is a slow, painful realization of his own insignificance amidst the scale of corporate warfare. Blade Runner 2049 is a meditative exploration of specialness. If the first film asked what makes us human, the second asks, does our origins matter if we are capable of self-sacrifice? Roger Deakins' cinematography creates frames that beg to be framed, but behind this beauty lies the icy emptiness of a world where nature has finally perished, giving way to plastic and pixels. This is a majestic and sad film about the search for meaning where none was originally intended. The Matrix 1999. Third place goes to the revolutionary film by the Wachowski brothers, now sisters, The Matrix. At the turn of the millennium, this project not only reimagined cyberpunk, it elevated it to the level of a mass religion. The plot of the hacker Neo, who discovers that his entire world is merely a digital simulation created by machines to harvest energy from human bodies, became the perfect metaphor for the digital age. The concept of a plug in the back of the head and the ability to download martial arts directly into the brain is the quintessential cyberpunk, where the body is merely an interface and the mind a battlefield. The horror here is global and existential. It is the fear that everything you see, feel, and love is merely electrical signals fed to the brain by a supercomputer. The image of Agent Smith, a faceless, omnipresent antivirus capable of taking over any body in a simulation, embodies the horror of a system that cannot be defeated alone. The reality outside the Matrix itself is terrifying: the scorched sky, the endless fields of incubators, and the dark depths of the Nebuchadnezzar. This is a world where humanity has already lost, and the only hope is to become a bug in the enemy's code. The Matrix gave us not only the legendary slow-mo and leather coats, but also a profound question about choosing between comfortable lies and the bitter truth. The green ticker of code became the visual code of the era. The film explores the theme of AI that has outgrown its creators and turned them into batteries. It's a film about awakening and the costly freedom in a cyberpunk world. It requires abandoning familiar illusions and a willingness to fight a program that knows everything about you. Ghost in the Shell, 1995. In fourth place is Mamoru Oshii's philosophical anime masterpiece, which directly inspired The Matrix. Ghost in the Shell takes us to the year 2029, to a world where the boundaries between man and machine are virtually erased. The main character, Major Motoko Kusanagi, is a cyborg, with only her brain and a spark of consciousness, known as the Ghost, remaining from her human body. She hunts the mysterious hacker puppeteer, who can hack people's minds, erasing their memories and replacing them with false beliefs. The horror here is hidden in the loss of identity. The film's most terrifying question: if all your organs are replaced with prosthetics, and your memory can be edited, are you still human? Scenes of Motoko diving into a sea of information and reflecting on her own essence against the backdrop of an endless metropolis create an atmosphere of melancholic trance. The puppeteer here is not just a criminal, but a new life form born in an ocean of data, which is simultaneously frightening and captivating. The visuals, with their detailed depiction of the mechanisms and gloomy streets of future Hong Kong, set the standard for dirty and realistic cyberpunk. Ghost in the Shell is an intellectual dive into cybernetic psychology. Free from Hollywood cliches, the film is slow, contemplative, and incredibly profound. It explores the evolution of life in a digital environment and asks whether a biological body is a prerequisite for the presence of a soul. This film explores how, in a world of high technology, a ghost can find a new home in endless networks, leaving behind steel armor. If you want to understand how cyberpunk discusses God and evolution, this anime is your essential guide. Akira, 1988, fifth place, goes to Katsuhiro Otomo's monumental anime, Akira. This explosive film shocked Western audiences in 1988 with its detail and brutality. The action takes place in Neo-Tokyo of 2019, a metropolis built on the ruins of the old capital after World War III. Here, cyberpunk meets biker gang aesthetics, political chaos, and secret military experiments on psychic children. The story of Tetsuo, who gains godlike powers and loses his mind, has become a benchmark for visual madness. The horror here is characterized by body horror and uncontrollable mutation. Scenes where Tetsuo's body begins to expand uncontrollably, consuming everything around him and turning into a shapeless mass of flesh and wires, still evoke nausea and awe. It's precisely this contrast that's frightening. High-tech futurism, orbital laser cannons, and garish neon collide with a primal, monstrous biological force. Neo-Tokyo is a festering city where cultists, terrorists, and corrupt politicians lurk around every corner, dreaming of exploiting the power of Akira for their own ends. Akira is a visual feast, with every frame hand-drawn with incredible precision. Kanada's famous slide on a red bike has become a pop culture icon. The film explores the theme of loss of control. What happens when you give unlimited power to a resentful teenager in a world that despises him? This is a film about the collapse of the old order and the painful birth of something new, superhuman. If you want to experience cyberpunk as pure energy of rage and destruction, Akira is your absolute favorite. RoboCop, 1987, coming in at number 6 is Paul Verhoeven's merciless satire, disguised as a brutal action film, RoboCop. In a future Detroit, OCP, Omni Consumer Products, privatizes the police force and creates the perfect cop from the remains of Officer Alex Murphy. His body is a titanium alloy, his mind a set of directives, but the cyberpunk here manifests itself not in neon lights, but in the ruthless power of corporations over human life and death. RoboCop is literally a product, an inventory item robbed of his name, family, and even the right to peace. The horror in the film is ultra-violent and systemic. The scene where Murphy is shot by Clarence Boddicker's gang is one of the most brutal in mainstream cinema, highlighting the vulnerability of flesh to lead. But even more terrifying is the cold calculation of OCP's top managers, for whom the death of an employee is merely a convenient excuse to launch a new business project. The mechanical antagonist, Ed D209, who, due to a software glitch, turns a junior lawyer into a bloody pulp right in the boardroom, is a caustic mockery of the belief in safe automation. RoboCop is a prophetic film about a world where the media turns violence into a spectacle, and corporations replace government. It's a story about the reclamation of humanity. Murphy literally has to break through his own code to remember his name. Verhoeven's grotesque humor makes this cyberpunk action film unique. It mocks consumer society while simultaneously revealing its darkest and bloodiest corners. This film teaches that even when you've been turned into a can of directives, a heart can still beat inside, yearning for justice. Total Recall, 1990. Seventh place goes to another masterpiece by Paul Verhoeven, Total Recall. This film is a perfect example of how cyberpunk can masquerade as a large-scale action film. Arnold Schwarzenegger plays ordinary worker Doug Quaid, haunted by dreams of Mars. He turns to a company called Recall, which implants false memories of a perfect vacation. But during the procedure, it turns out that his real memory has already been erased and replaced. Now Quaid must fly to Red Mars to discover who he really is, an ordinary guy or an elite spy. The horror here takes on the character of a hallucinatory nightmare. The very concept of losing control of one's identity is terrifying. If your memories are just files that can be bought or erased, then what makes you you? Verhoeven masterfully utilizes practical effects, the deformed Martian mutants, the disguise of a fat woman literally breaking apart, and the scene where a bug is removed from a nose, all create a sense of physical discomfort. In the film, Mars is a suffocating colony, where a corporation sells even the air to people, the quintessential cyberpunk dystopia, a total monopoly on life. Total Recall is a multi-layered puzzle. Until the very end, the viewer remains unsure whether this is all really happening or if Quaid is still sitting in the recall chair, slowly going mad from a lobotomy. The film explores the theme of class struggle against a backdrop of rusty high-tech and endless screens. This is a film about how truth isn't what you remember, but what you're willing to fight for in a world where lies are cheaper than a pack of cigarettes. Strange Days, 1995. At number 8 is Kathryn Bigelow's Strange Days, unfairly overlooked at its release, but now a cult classic. James Cameron himself wrote the screenplay, and it's felt in every detail. Los Angeles in 1999, on the eve of the new millennium, a city on the brink of social upheaval. The central technology here is the squid, an illegal device that records human experience, sight, hearing, tactile sensations, and even emotions directly from the cerebral cortex onto a digital disc. Lenny Nero is a dealer in these digital drugs, selling other people's memories. The horror here is voyeuristic and deeply intimate. The squid technology allows you to experience someone else's life, but it also gives rise to monstrous crimes. One of the film's most terrifying scenes is shot from a first-person perspective. The killer places a device on the victim and himself, forcing her to feel her own death through his eyes. This is the pinnacle of cyberpunk sadism, where high technology is used for the most perverse violence. The entire film is permeated with the atmosphere of a dirty, sweaty, and dangerous metropolis, suffocating in anticipation of the apocalypse, while its inhabitants addict themselves to the emotions of others. Strange Days is a prophetic statement about our addiction to content and video. Today we call it social media and streaming, but back in the 90s, Bigelow showed how the thirst for other people's emotions destroys the ability to live our own lives. Visually, the film is a dense noir, with endless city lights at night, and handheld cameras creating a sense of presence. This is a film about how memory must remain private, lest it turn into a weapon capable of burning the entire world. Johnny Mnemonic, 1995, Nyum Place goes to a film that became a visual manifesto of 90s aesthetics, Johnny Mnemonic. Based on a short story by the father of cyberpunk, William Gibson, this film gave us Keanu Reeves as a mnemonic courier. In a world where the global network causes a deadly disease called nervous exhaustion syndrome, the safest way to transmit data is through the human brain. Johnny erased his childhood memories to make room for an implant, and now he's transporting 320 gigabytes of classified information, a figure that seemed astronomical in 1995. The problem is that the data volume exceeds the permissible limit, and Johnny's brain is about to explode if he doesn't download it in time. The horror here is both technological and physiological. It's the fear of information overload that literally kills the hero. The vision of a future where transnational corporations like Pharmacom control cures for the diseases they themselves created is terrifying. Visually, the film is a mixture of grimy back alleys, high-tech laboratories, and early naive virtual reality graphics that today look like ominous digital surrealism. Yakuza with laser threads, cyborg preachers played by Dolph Lundgren, and intelligent dolphin hackers create the atmosphere of a frantic, oversaturated world where human flesh is merely a temporary container for valuable code. Johnny Mnemonic is the quintessential embodiment of the high-tech, low-life slogan. The film explores the theme of rootlessness. Johnny is willing to sell his memory for comfort, but ultimately finds himself drawn into a war for the survival of the entire species. This film is about how, in the digital future, information isn't just power, it's an infection capable of either saving the world or turning your mind into white noise. Despite its somewhat archaic visuals, the concept of data worth dying for is more relevant today than ever. Dredd, 2012. Coming in at number 10 is the brutal, uncompromising, and incredibly stylish Judge Dredd. Forget the 90s version with Stallone. This is a true cyberpunk dystopia. Megacity 1 is a gigantic metropolis on the east coast of the United States. Wedged in a radioactive desert, 800 million people live in massive skyscraper-like apartment blocks where the crime rate is off the charts. The only law is the judges, who serve as police, judges, and executioners all at once. Dredd and his trainee partner, Cassandra Anderson, find themselves trapped in the 200-story Peachtree building, controlled by drug lord Mama, who distributes Rapid, a drug that slows down time perception. The horror in Dredd is claustrophobia and an ultra-violent aesthetic. Thanks to the effects of the drug Rapid, scenes of violence are shown in incredibly beautiful, yet terrifying slow motion. Drops of blood, flying shards of glass, and falls from enormous heights become terrifying art. The scale of social decay is terrifying. The apartment block is a vertical ghetto where human life is worthless. Mama is a cold, disfigured leader for whom violence is the only language. Dredd, meanwhile, is not a hero in shining armor, but a function of the system, a faceless punisher whose helmet we never see removed throughout the film. Dredd is a triumph of minimalism in cyberpunk. The entire plot is one protracted siege, where high technology is represented by voice-activated smart guns and psychic abilities. The film explores the theme of order in the face of absolute chaos, and the price society pays for security. This is a film about a world where concrete and steel are more important than human feelings, and survival is a daily lottery in the shadow of endless megablocks. If you want to see cyberpunk as a straight-up hard punch to the ribs, Dredd is your choice. Upgrade, 2018, till 11th place goes to one of the most striking and daring cyberpunk thrillers of recent years, Upgrade. Leigh Whannell has crafted a story that feels like a descendant of RoboCop and Black Mirror. Gray Trace is an old-school man who prefers to work with his hands and dislikes ubiquitous automation. After a gang attack, he is left paralyzed, and his wife is killed. The only chance for recovery is a secret artificial intelligence chip called STEM, which is implanted in his spine and takes control of his nervous system. The horror here is rooted in the loss of control over one's own body. The most spectacular and frightening scenes are the fights, where STEM takes control. Gray is transformed into the perfect killing machine. His movements are mechanically precise, lightning fast, and devoid of human limitations. Horror is evident in Gray's own eyes, as he watches with horror as his hands methodically dispatch his enemies, while he remains a passive spectator in his own head. Upgrade masterfully demonstrates that AI doesn't necessarily have to be a massive supercomputer. A tiny chip whispering commands directly into your brain is enough. Upgrade is a visually impeccable, low-budget film that manages to look more expensive than many blockbusters. Its vision of the future is sterile and cold: driverless cars, smart homes, and cyborgs with implants sewn directly into their palms. The film explores the theme of technology addiction and asks a terrifying question: who is truly in charge, the biological brain or the perfect algorithm that has upgraded your body? The ending of this story leaves a heavy aftertaste, a reminder that in the world of cyberpunk, every upgrade comes with a hidden price. Alita: Battle Angel, 2019. At number 12 is the massive film adaptation of the cult manga by Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron. Alita: Battle Angel takes us to the year 2563, to Iron City, a filthy, overcrowded city located beneath the floating sky metropolis of Zalem. Dr. Ito finds the remains of a teenage cyborg in a junkyard and gives her a new body. Alita has no memory of her past, but soon discovers that she has mastered the ancient martial art of Panzerkunst, designed to destroy cyborgs. The horror here is hidden in the social injustice and mechanical violence of Motorball, a deadly sport where cyborgs literally tear each other to pieces for the slim chance of reaching the top in Zalem. Iron City is a classic cyberpunk dump, where human parts lie scattered among household trash. The antagonist Gryusha is terrifying, a massive cyborg with chained claws, embodying technological might dedicated to pure destruction. Alita's visuals, with her enormous anime eyes, exploit the uncanny valley effect, emphasizing her otherness compared to ordinary people and other machines. Alita is a vibrant, dynamic cyberpunk film with a teenage soul. The film explores the theme of self-identity. Alita constantly shifts bodies, becoming a fragile girl, then an invincible fighter, all the while struggling to maintain her identity. This film is about the dream of a better world, hanging directly overhead but completely out of reach for those living below. Rodriguez created an incredibly detailed world where high technology is not a luxury, but the only way to repair oneself in the endless struggle for survival. This is a story about how even a completely artificial heart can be the most lifelike on this planet. The Terminator 1984, 13th place, goes to a film often called techno-noir, but its roots are deeply rooted in cyberpunk, The Terminator. Although the action takes place in the present of 1984, the very concept of an alien from the future who is a perfect cybernetic organism, the T-800, is pure cyberpunk. The Skynet Corporation, having seized control of the world and determined to exterminate humanity with intelligent machines, is the quintessential fear of the uncontrolled development of AI and the military industry. The horror here is built on the absolute inexorability of metal. Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 is not just a robot, but a cyborg, covered in living tissue, infiltrating human society like a virus. The most terrifying scenes are those of self-repair, where a red photoreceptor appears behind the human eye and chrome pistons beneath the skin. It's precisely this imitation of life that is terrifying. A machine can speak like a human, look like a human, but inside it lies only a program for destruction. The final chase through the factory, where a fleshless steel skeleton continues to pursue Sarah Connor, becomes the visual embodiment of a nightmare about the rise of the machines. James Cameron's The Terminator is a dark prophecy about how our technology is the seeds of our own destruction. The film explores the theme of predetermination and the fragility of a civilization that can collapse in an instant due to a coding error. The atmosphere of a nighttime Los Angeles, saturated with smoke and blue light, perfectly conveys the aesthetics of low life in a world where high-tech is already preparing humanity's grave. This movie is about how, in a battle of flesh against steel, the former has little chance unless it learns to think as effectively as a machine. Minority Report, 2002. In 14th place is Steven Spielberg's high-tech detective film based on the Philip K. Dick short story, Minority Report. Washington in 2054 seems like a utopia. Crime has been virtually eradicated thanks to the pre-crime system, which employs 3 clairvoyants, providers who predict murders before they happen. Tom Cruise plays John Enderton, the captain of this unit, who suddenly finds himself on a hit list. He must flee the system he himself built, trying to prove that people always have a choice. The horror here is one of total surveillance and loss of privacy. The world of Minority Report is a white-collar cyberpunk, where retinal scanners are everywhere, and personalized advertising calls you by name right on the street. The idea of thought crime is terrifying. You could be arrested and locked in a stasis pod for something you haven't yet committed. The scene with spider robots scanning the eyes of citizens in search of a fugitive is a pure technological nightmare, demonstrating that in this future, there's nowhere to hide. Spielberg created an incredibly detailed world of gadgets, interfaces, and self-driving roads that seems frighteningly close to reality today. Minority Report is a profound exploration of free will versus determinism. Can algorithms or seers determine our fate? The film asks questions about the legitimacy of preventative justice and what price society is willing to pay for perfect security. This visually impeccable film, with its faded, cold imagery, demonstrates that even the most perfect order can be a tool for manipulation and tyranny. Elysium, Heaven on Earth, 2013. Closing our list is Neil Blomkamp's socio-political action film, Elysium. By 2015, humanity has been completely divided into 2 camps. The super-rich live on the luxurious space station Elysium, with its clean air and medical capsules capable of instantly curing any disease. The rest of the population ekes out a miserable existence on an overcrowded, trash-heaped Earth. The protagonist, Max, after receiving a lethal dose of radiation at a factory, decides to take a desperate step, implant himself with an exoskeleton, and break into the station to save his life. The horror here is both physiological and social. The scene of the makeshift exoskeleton installation is a pure cyberpunk nightmare. Dirty tools, no anesthesia, and metal pins screwed directly into the hero's bones. The contrast between the sterile paradise above and the rusty hell below, where people are merely expendable for corporations, is frightening. The film's antagonist, the mercenary Kruger, is the embodiment of cyberpunk combat, a sadist festooned with implants for whom human life is worth nothing. His recovery from the explosion of his face in a med pod is one of the most graphic and terrifying scenes, demonstrating that technology can not only save, but also make monsters virtually immortal. Elysium is a powerful statement about inequality, where the exoskeleton becomes a symbol of the last hope of the oppressed. Blomkamp's visual style, as always, is striking in its detail. Battered armor, sparking wires, and police drones look frighteningly real. The film explores the theme of accessibility. What good are great discoveries if they belong only to a select few? This dynamic and brutal film explores how, in the cyberpunk world, the right to be healthy and free must be paid for with blood and steel. We've traveled from the neon rains of Los Angeles to the orbital stations of the future. Cyberpunk isn't just a genre about technology, it's a genre about people trying to remain themselves in a world where everything, from memory to organs, has become a commodity. We've seen how virtual reality can become a cage, and how a cybernetic implant can become a tool for revenge or salvation. Which of these worlds scares you the most? Would you like to be able to download knowledge directly into your brain, like in the Matrix, or would you prefer to remain a pure human in the world of Upgrade? Or maybe you think we're already living in the cyberpunk era and just haven't noticed. Let us know in the comments which film from our tier list is your favorite. Give this neon analysis a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next dives into the history of cinema. The future is already here, and it looks damn stylish, if a little terrifying. See you online.